Are you tired of spending your time and money chasing strategy after strategy only to discover what worked 10, 5, or even 2 years ago is not working now? Things shift fast in the online space, and if you're not keeping up, you're getting left behind. It's time for something different. Welcome to the Marketing, Media, and Money Podcast, where every single episode will be jam-packed with proven, profitable strategies, behind-the-scenes secrets, and what's working now resources from industry experts and global influencers to help you scale your business, shorten your learning curve, and stand out in a crowded, noisy marketplace. And now, your host, award-winning marketing and media strategist, and international speaker, Patty Farmer.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Marketing, Media, and Money Podcast. I'm really looking forward to sharing with you today another amazing industry expert and a global influencer with you today. And she's somebody that I have known for a while, and we have collaborated on a few things. So you'll be hearing a lot more about her in the future, so as you stay tuned for that. But let me tell you a little bit about her. So Jo Hausman is an inspirational speaker, entrepreneur, real estate investor, former international live radio show host, and an Amazon best-selling author of her book, Go For It, A Woman's Guide to Perseverance. She loves to empower and mentor women to live a life of purpose, passion, and payday through building their own business. Her expertise lies in starting businesses and networking. The power of networking is how she built and sustained her businesses. The passion she has coming from empowering women to live in a positive life and build a successful business. She's appeared on numerous television, radio, blogs, and podcasts around the world, and she has been a contributing blogger to Huffington Post and has had an article published in the Reader's Digest. So that's what I meant when I said she was a global influencer and an amazing industry expert. Thank you, Jo, for being here with us today.
Thank you, Patty. Thanks for having me.
I know, I'm really excited. I can't wait to share you with my audience. And I have to tell you, we have so many things to talk about today that literally narrowing it down was going to be tough for me. I'm sure already we haven't even started yet, but we're already going to have you on again, I know, just to get in everything that I want to talk about. But we're going to go ahead and start like quick and fast, just because I want to try to get in as much value as I can.
Absolutely.
So I hope everybody out there's got your pen and paper, because she's going to give you a lot of writer-downers. So you said something, Jo, first that I really love, because it hit home to me, where you said that you really built your business through the power of networking. For me, that is 100% how I have built my business. And so I really love it when I find somebody else who's passionate about that as well. So let's start first. I always like to start with things that everybody needs to kind of know what not to do too, but there's always a lot of myths about networking, right? And so what would you say are some of the top myths you know about networking?
Oh boy, some of the top myths about networking. Well, let me tell you, because when I started a business, oh my gosh, 15, 17 years ago now. I mean, that was before the internet, right? So, it was all in person. And I think one of the myths is that you have to meet with everybody, and you don't. Go after the ones that you really want to network with, and then go from there. But one of the mistakes I made when I was networking way back in the beginning is I just networked with everybody. If somebody said, I want to do coffee, by gosh, we went and had coffee. If we want to do lunch, by goodness, we went to do lunch. And which is great, but after a while, your time gets so consumed with all of that I had to finally just say, stop, I have to work on my business now. I have to go back and just really figure that out. So that would be one of the main myths or main things I would tell people is, yes, networking is fantastic, and that's exactly what you have to do, but don't overconsume your life with it. Does that make sense? I mean, there has to be a healthy balance.
I totally agree with you. I feel like I always like to tell people, how many times have you gone and met somebody for coffee and then walked out of there and thought, oh my gosh, that's 2 hours of my life I'm never going to get back. And I'm sure everybody listening out there is raising their hand going, me, me, me. And I think the reason for that is because they don't really spend enough time up front. You know, they say, you know, everybody likes to talk about how the fortune's in the follow-up. And believe me, it is. But I think it also is in the front too. And I think that in today's day where, you know, we have Zoom and there's so many other ways, I think that people should do a little bit more due diligence before we automatically jump to coffee. For me, I have like 5 questions I always ask, and I always have a short conversation first that tells me where the next step is, you know, whether it should be a phone conversation or whether we should meet for coffee. I want my coffee dates, so to speak, to be super productive. And it's really important. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I heard the other day, now I have to tell you, Joe, for all the time that I have been networking, I have to say, not because I'm so wonderful, but it's very rare for me, honestly, for somebody to tell me a networking tip that I haven't heard of before. Like, it just doesn't happen, right? And the other day, somebody told me a networking tip that literally I was speechless, and I thought to myself, wow, I wish I'd have thought of that. Why isn't everyone doing it? And just because we're talking about it, I'm going to go ahead and share it and tell me whether you've heard this before. And isn't it brilliant? Although it's not me. I'm going to give a shout out to Ryan Rainey for that. But here it is. And basically, this is what he said. He said, in the world today where you're networking online and offline, what is something immediate that you can do for somebody that really is a benefit, like really shows that you're a giver, right? And he said, you know, he said that he doesn't do it when he just networks with somebody, like as you're in a group together. He says, it's really because we've had a conversation and I've got to know them. He said, but if we get to that point and then we meet, here's how he ends all his in-person or online meetings after you've done a little bit of work. So this isn't for the person you really don't know, because you got to know that you want to make sure that you are being authentic and real. But this is what he said. He said that what he does is he asks them, do you have a Facebook business page? Which most people do, right? And he says what he does is they pull out their phones and right then and there, after they've had this conversation talking about business and he gets to know them more, they pull out their phones and give each other 5-star reviews on their Facebook business page right there.
Oh, that's phenomenal. I love that.
Isn't it great? So think about every single time you met somebody for coffee, if you were giving each other 5-star reviews, if they were truly a 5-star review, right? If they were, how many more reviews you'd have and what would that do for you as a benefit? And he says, if somebody has a brick and mortar business, he says they will actually leave them a review on Google.
Oh, nice.
And I thought, wow. And I was, you know, in the moment, I thought to myself, how many meetings have I had, right? And if I had left people a review or they had left one for me every single time, literally how many hundreds and hundreds of reviews would you have? Isn't it brilliant?
That is phenomenal. I love that tip. Because, you know, I think about it when people ask me to do it, but yeah, that is great. I love that.
Yes, that was my strategy that he said. And when he did it, I was like, oh, that's my new strategy for my meetings.
That's going to make me be mine too. That's great.
Yes. So what do you think has been your number one, now it'll be this, but what do you think is your number one strategy that has really worked for you as far as generating revenue?
As far as generating revenue is, I tend to give more than what they expect. And that's the thing that I hear over and over again from my clients. Now, at one point in time, I used to like go way above and beyond, but now I like to give more though. I like to, if I say I'm going to do this, 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 and this, like 5 different things, I might do 6 and 7 different things just because I want, plus I'm going to network their business. So anybody who comes to me, I'm going to also network their business because if I believe enough in them to have business with them, then I should be referring them out to other people as well. So that is the one main thing that I do. And then I get that referral business coming in. Plus, if other people know that I'm referring business, then that gets them interested as well. Because again, if I take the time, because I've done my interview with this person, I've connected with them, I've taken them on as clients or whatever the case may be, I trust them and I truly believe in their business. And so then I'm able to network their business. And that's really what it is for me.
I love that. On a scale of 1 to 10, how good a networker would you say you are?
Oh, I'd say I'm a 9, 10.
You go, girl.
I love networking. Matter of fact, I should almost be a professional networker. Seriously, that should be my title.
I definitely say I'm a master networker. And one of the things I always love to tell people all the time is probably something I've been quoted on more than anything. I think I even have it on some pins that I have that says that you should strive to be a people connector instead of a business card collector.
Yes, exactly. I've heard that before and I love that. Because honestly, I'll never give anybody my business card unless they ask for it. Because I
agree with you. I treat my business cards like they're $100.
Me too.
There should be no reason people should just be handing out
absolutely
business cards. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I do, I actually usually share this in pretty much almost every speech I give. It's one of my actual signature techniques. But one of the things I always like to say is, this is for in-person. So think of that stack of business cards everybody always has on their desk, right? Not me, but this is what they have. And so this is what I always like to say, because people ask me all the time, Patty, what social media platform should I be on? I'm like, where your potential clients are, that's the answer. And so here's the technique that I do. When I am at an event and I'm having conversation with people, if we get to the point in the conversation where we are exchanging business cards, and like I said, I don't hand my business card out to everybody, but if we get to the point in the conversation where we are, here's the question that I ask them. And to set it up first is, when I have my business card, everybody's going to be different, and all that matters is that you set up yours. But in my mind, the top right corner is LinkedIn, then it's Facebook, then it's Instagram, and then it's Twitter. And so what happens for me is, when I'm talking to them and we exchange business cards, as they're giving me their business card, I always say this: so tell me, where do you like to hang out? What's your favorite social media platform? And then they'll tell me. And if they say Facebook or Twitter, whatever they say, when we're done, I fold the corner of their business card to whatever they said. So when I get home and I have those business cards, I don't need to connect with everybody on every single social media platform. All I need to do is to connect with them on the social media platform they just said they hang out. That's all I need to do. And that one thing for me has made such a difference, because now, you know, with the algorithms the way they are, if you're connected to the people of where they actually hang out, then you have a better chance of having what you have to say show up in their feed. So it has really been a benefit to me, and something that I really teach my clients is to really just be thinking about your networking, right? I think that it's really important to have a strategy about networking. And I think a lot of times people think, oh, we should have a strategy about follow-up, but they don't always have a strategy about networking. And I think networking and follow-up are not exactly the same thing.
Right.
And I think the biggest myth, I would say, is when people think that networking and selling are the same thing, and they are so not the same.
Oh, they are so not the same thing.
Absolutely.
I mean, two totally opposite things for sure. And you know what? I love that, because I do the exact same thing. And a lot of times it also depends on what network you're on and how you perform business. You know, LinkedIn is definitely more business orientated, whereas Twitter is definitely more not, put it that way. And it is, but it's not. And I went to a speech this summer and the gal goes, oh, I'm only on Twitter. Okay, well, that's fine. You know, so we follow each other on Twitter. Do I get on Twitter all the time? No. Am I on it? Maybe once a week, maybe, if I'm, you know, but she wants to follow me. And I told her, I said, I don't know if you're going to see me a lot on Twitter, even though I've got a lot of followers on there. But I said, if you want to see me, you got to go to these other platforms. And I think that really awakened with her, just like what you're saying, because she emailed me just a month or so ago and said, you're so right. I need to be on these other platforms because that's where my audience is.
And I think it's different, and your voice needs to be different each one.
Yes.
Now, I have to tell you, it's kind of funny that you just personally chose to say that about Twitter, because obviously this is something you don't know about me. So I'm going to clue you in. Twitter is my favorite social media platform.
Oh, is it really?
Where I spend the most amount of time. I think it is hands down the best lead generation tool ever. And I get, are you ready for it? 74% of my closed business originates on Twitter.
So good for you. And that's what she was saying too. Now for me, I've had some success on Twitter, maybe 20%, but I just don't have the success on there that I do the other platforms. And for each person, it's different. And that just proves it right there. Each person is different in how you perform on each social media network.
I love that, because I think that really makes a lot of sense. So before we move on from networking, let's go a little bit to the follow-up. So what is your top ways that you like to follow up with people? Can you give us one for if you are networking with them online, and one for if you're networking with them in person?
Absolutely. So if I'm networking with them in person and I'm at a networking event, I've met them, and if I get home that night, I'm going to probably usually send them an email right away that night or right away the next morning, because I'm going to say, thank you so much. I've so appreciated. That's if I either email or social media, wherever I'm connecting with them at. I've enjoyed meeting you. And then I try to remember some of the pertinent things that they've said. And then say, if I can help you, I would love to be able to find you some business or whatever the case may be. So from there, then I usually wait about a week or so, and then I'll follow up again saying, hey, whatever the case may be, it's so great now toward the holidays. And I say happy holidays or happy 4th of July or whatever, if I know their birthday's coming up. And then online, I will basically do the same thing right away. I will send them, I'm so glad to meet you. I'm so glad that we met. I'm so glad we sat next to each other at this networking event we were at. And then I'll follow up with them again in a day or two saying, is there any way I can help you? How can I help you get more business? So again, I want to give more to others, and I want to be able to help them grow their business. And that's how I do it. I've had so much success that way that it's just instilled in me that I want to help others get more for themselves.
I love it. Now I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to be honest. I kind of like to ask everybody this question, and their answers are always really varied and for different reasons. And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. So I'll say that. But when you are networking with someone and we're kind of doing the tell each other about each other, do you prefer to go first or second?
I prefer to go second, because I like to know about them first. There are times that people don't like that. They want to know about me first, and then they'll tell, but I prefer to go second because I want to know about them, what they like, what they're into, what their business is, those type of things.
I agree with you. I like to go second as well, but mostly because I'm very strategic since I'm in marketing. So I feel like if I listen to them first, then the value that I can bring to them can be more strategic. So I choose to go second if I can. I know a lot of people, though, who like to go first, and they feel like that if they go first, then the way the conversation will go will be better. I think that one time I read this rule of thumb. I don't think there's ever really a rule of thumb that said that whoever initiates the meeting, should go first or second. But I think that there really is no rule. I think a lot of times it is just about conversation. But for me, if I'm initiating the call, I usually have a reason, right? There's something they said or did, or I'm interested in, or I love the way they're doing something. And so I want to know about that. And so I want to hear about that first. That's the reason why I wanted to have the call. I'm not really about at all just having coffee just to have coffee. Like, I'm very social and I love that, but I really think that it is a much better conversation if you have a reason, which kind of leads me into where I want to go next, which is when people do introductions. And I love that we can have this conversation because, one of my pet peeves, I'm going to ask you to share one of yours, but one of my pet peeves is when people do introductions For me, I love it. Thank you so much for everybody who's ever given me an introduction. But I am all about strategy, right? And so for me, I feel like if you're going to take the time to introduce me to someone, it would just help so much if you would tell us why. Like, tell us why you introduce us, even if it's just a little something, even if it's just that you are both so dynamic. I just know there's going to be some synergy, like something, because then when we connect, like, give us something to work with. I've had so many people that have said, oh, I want you to introduce you to this person. Then I've looked at what she's done. I've known like 50 people who do what they do. And I'm like, okay, so you have to know that I probably know 50 people who do what they do. So what did you see? Like, tell us something. For me, when I do introductions, I'm, like I said, not everybody's as strategic as me. But for me, if I know you, like I know you, Joe, and if I was going to do introductions for you, I would really love to be able to, I'll ask people. I'll say, how would you like to be introduced? Because have you ever had anybody do an introduction for you and you're like, man, they don't even really understand what I do. And that's not how you would really, it could have been better. I mean, you appreciate it, right? But so for me, if I'm going to do introductions for someone, I love to be able to say, I have literally a whole list of people that I regularly do introductions for, and I'll add my personalization to it, right? What I want to be able to say and why I wanted to do it. But if I'm going to introduce somebody, I'd really prefer to introduce them the way they want to be introduced. So what's your pet peeve, and like, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, so I'm going to tell you exact same thing. Just the other day, I was introducing two people via email because I was telling a gentleman I know about a gal that I know who's in business that he's really interested in, but he's actually done that same business his whole entire life. Well, if I was to introduce him to her because she's doing something a little bit different than and he's really interested in that, but I introduced him. Then I went into explanation why I'm introducing. Because if I would have said, hey, Gene, Don over here, all he wants to do is get to know you more and get to know what you're doing. Well, what good is that, right? So I went into detail about why he wanted to be introduced to her. So that's going to make the connection for them even easier. She even called me yesterday and thanked me for that because she said that made our conversation better. I'm going to give you an example of one time somebody referred me and I was like in the dark. So when my book first got published, I mean, I was just happy. It was just done. I was so done with writing a book. And this was almost 4 years ago, but I was just done. I didn't want to think about it anymore. All of a sudden, somebody says, hey, you need to talk to so-and-so. All right. So I talked to him. He goes, well, here's my manuscript. Help me write it. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I said, I just published my own book, but that doesn't mean I do manuscripts and those kind of things. And he goes, well, I was told that you're an author now, so you do all these things. And it blew my mind. I was so taken aback. I'm like, well, yeah, but it's not, I was just so, mentally drained from writing a book. I just couldn't even think about doing anything more. So at that point, that would have been great if that person would have said, hey, this is what this person's looking for. Is there any way you can help him out? If not, could you refer him to somebody? Those type of things. But instead we met and he just handed me his whole manuscript. He goes, here, take this and do something with it. And I'm like, no, I won't do it. That's not my genre,
Well, and then you kind of have to overcome these hurdles, and you're like, and then you're like, and people can kind of tell, like you can kind of tell when you're having a conversation and somebody's done an introduction and you're like, oh, and, or it could be somebody you really want to talk to. Somebody's doing an introduction for you, but because they didn't introduce you in the right way, that person's just not all that inclined. How sometimes then they'll be like, oh yeah, I'm kind of busy for the next few weeks, whatever. Like when I do introductions, and stuff, I really like it when somebody, like I put it in a way like you need to get this done like this week, like this, I'm introducing you to somebody that, really, so I think that, how there's an art to doing an introduction as well.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's a good skill set to learn. And people, when they see how you give an introduction, if you do it right, I mean, it's the law of reciprocity, right? They want to be able to help you too. It's like, oh my gosh, that was like amazing, and I have to tell you, there's a girl, oh, actually, too, she's in our mastermind, who literally has done so many introductions for me, but more than that, she does something that not that many people do. She follows up and wants to know, like, how did that referral or that introduction to work out for you that I did for you? Like, she takes it so seriously, like she follows up. Like, not that many people will do that. And I'm not saying everybody has to do that either. I mean, there's times it's appropriate, times not, depending upon what type of introduction it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have to tell you, the first time she did it, I was like, wow, that was like pretty impressive. And you know what? Like, I gave her like 3 introductions and a referral of somebody who actually hired her like within 2 weeks. I mean, she was top of mind to me because I thought that was so impressive. So I think that there's things that we can do, that we can show up and really stand out, that are pretty simple if people just think about it a little bit.
Right. Yes, absolutely. If people just think about it and put some thought into it. And I think in today's age, with everything being at our fingertips, just here's a message and here you go. And I was guilty of that for a while. I would just, sometimes the thoughts in my head were going faster than what I was typing. And some people would type back, go, what? And so I had to teach myself to slow down and really type out like what I wanted. And especially in something like that, if you're referring somebody, really explain out why you're referring them and give them some examples of why, or even pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, I just want to let you know, I just sent you an email referring, so-and-so to you. And it becomes so much better for them and for you and for the person that you're referring, that it just makes the whole thing go better. And I love that when you say that too, because it makes it so much better.
I agree. So since we brought up your book, let's go there. So your book, Go For It, A Woman's Guide to Perseverance. Now, I really love that. And I think that, through this whole conversation, we've been talking about perseverance, productivity, really like how, if you set these standards. But I know that there's kind of a personal story for you about perseverance. So, if you will, do you mind sharing a little bit of it? Because I think that story is really what kind of led you through the networking, keeping going what you're doing, and really got you to where some of the things that you're really passionate about, like real estate investing, happened, like all these things. And so can you share a little bit about that? I love it.
Sure. Well, and unfortunately, it came from a sad circumstance. So I was married early in life, divorced, and I was a single mom for 10 years, which, back then I was struggling financially, but yet I just loved it. And I always did a plan B. So I was always working a little part-time business at night from my home. But anyway, then I met my wonderful husband, and we were married. And so there was the 3 of us, my husband and I and my son. And then unfortunately, what happened is he became sick in 2007. I started my full-time business in 2004. He became sick in 2007 and then unfortunately passed away in 2010. At the same time, my son had just graduated high school in May of 2010. And then Jim passed away in July. And then Cody went off to college. So as a mom, first of all, I was doing my business. And then as a mom, I'm worried about my son going off to college. And it was just something that just kept me going, that I knew I had to have perseverance. And I knew I had to just keep going for my son and my family, but mostly for me. And also for my business, because my business was my livelihood and is what kept me going through the hard times. So then I decided to go back and get my master's degree shortly after my husband passed and my son was off of college. So ironically enough, we graduated a week apart from each other, both from different universities. But he had come home, he was about a junior in college, and he said, Mom, we should write a book together about our experience with Jim. And I'm like, really? You think so? And he said, yeah. So that's kind of where it all started.
Wow. I think it's an inspiring story, right? I think that obviously the grief and everything that you went through, the fact that your son and you together could work through that in this story, in this book, I think is really empowering, right? And there may be a lot of people out there that maybe that's not exactly their story, but they've gone through a lot of things, whether it's been through a divorce, a loss of some type, and really learning how to persevere and really get through that and then become more for lack of a better term, productive in your life again, whether it is finding something new, whether it is really digging deep and realizing that, you know what, I've been passionate about this and I was doing this, but you know what, I'm going to unpack that and maybe I should look at that again. And maybe something that was a plan B becomes a plan A, right? Or maybe you just go off in a whole nother direction. I think there's a lot of different things that people do.
Yep.
Whenever you do have a new chapter, you have to stop reading your old chapter first, right? You need to start rereading that chapter. So I think it's really great that you were able to do that with your son and that you were able to write the story. And what was the thing that actually compelled you to become a real estate investor?
That's really with my husband. When he was alive and we had moved from one state to another, we decided to start some real estate investing. So we read books on it. And I said, maybe let's just try with one house. And well, then we got several more. Well, when he got sick, we couldn't keep up. He had lost his job and there's just a bunch of financial hardship. So we ended up having to sell them all. And that was so disappointing for him. Well, for me too. But I thought, well, honestly, I really did think he was always going to get better and that we would do it after he got better. And when the time came and he passed, and a couple years later, I thought, I think I could do this myself, because what I learned from him and I together, I said, I think I'm just going to go and start looking at investments. So two years after he passed away, I decided to go start looking at investments, and lo and behold, I bought my first investment. And since then, I've been investing, and now I just don't invest in my own state. I invest outside my state, and I have learned so much about it that because I'm constantly keeping my eyes and ears open for different ideas. There's a lot of times I sit and I listen, and I might not ever say a thing, but I listen and then I'll write things down that I want to know. But also I'm going to give credit back to my late husband. He was quiet. He was a quiet man. Unlike me. And he was just always thinking. He was just always, thinking about what our, next financial move was. And to him, I give great credit, because before, as a single mom, of course, you always have to watch every penny. Of course, we always have to do that. But now with real estate investing, I've kind of taken that one step further and just really watching everything, watching what the market is doing. And that is so, I'm not going to say it's fun, but it's very strategic for me. Real estate investing is strategic, and just learning all I can about it.
I love that. And I think one of the things that I also think is really interesting, and I want to make sure that we touch on today too, is podcasting. Now, I know it kind of seems really interesting that, we're talking about networking and podcasting and writing a book and grief and perseverance and real estate, and what do all of those things have to do with each other? But I think one of the things that I think is really interesting, that I really have found very inspiring about you, Jo, is your ability to look at all options and to really decide what is the thing that you want to do, and that you don't have to do it the way everybody else has done it. I know for myself, thinking about the different things that I've done, right? And I know that when I wanted to publish a magazine, literally my team said, oh no, we don't have the bandwidth for that. And I listened to everybody, they all had valid reasons. And I thought, I am kind of doing a lot and I'm traveling a lot. So I put off the magazine for like 2 years before I finally just said no. Like, it was in my gut. I just needed to do it. And now it's been 2 years, and it is one of the things that I do that I absolutely love so much. As a speaker, I wasn't sure if that would be something that I want to, but you know what? Marketing and media is in my blood. And I just it was really important. And I wish I would have done it sooner, but that's okay. I did. And when I decided to do the podcast, everybody said, why didn't you do the podcast before you did the magazine? And part of the thing, and I'm going to be really honest here, is because there were so many options and so many things. I am not a techie girl. I am a work in my brilliance and hire other people to work in theirs. And so I literally interviewed so many people like, oh, what kind of podcast editor should I have? Should I go with a company? Should I have somebody else produce it? Should I just do blog talk radio? Should I go to, there's so many options now, right? The barrier for entry is so low into doing a podcast. I knew what my message was. I knew what I wanted to do, but really the how got in the way. Mm-hmm. And, I persevered and, we obviously launched the podcast, but for me, there are so many options. And even today I think, oh my gosh, should I be doing video? Should I be doing, yesterday, I think I shared with you before that I did my first LinkedIn Live, and should I be doing it this? And I have to tell you, one of the things for me that got in my way is thinking that just because we have so many options doesn't mean we should always do them all. Like, what is the best option for you? And I would really love for us to be able to talk about that, because you did a completely different path than I did, just as successful, right, as so many other people. And I think that there are people in the audience, I get asked a lot, I think I want to do a podcast, but I'm not quite sure what I should do. And so I think that there's questions. So let's have a conversation about that. What made you decide to go with a live radio show that also became a podcast, that also did this and that, and you had it produced, right? Mm-hmm. So there were a lot of different things, which was a completely different path that I took, right? So let's kind of talk about that, because I know that there are people that are listening to us right now that are actually wondering these same things. So tell me why you made your decision. Why were those the choices that you made?
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you asked me that, because that really was a passion of mine. So I'm going to go back to my back to my middle school years. I, ironically enough, always wanted to be a radio DJ. When I was in 6th and 7th grade, I remember thinking, someday I'm going to grow up and be a radio DJ. Well, little did I know how little they make, but I always loved that. And I loved being behind a camera. I'm behind a microphone, to the point that when I was in college, I went and worked at our local radio station, and I was able to do some commercials so that was always kind of in my blood. And that's why I love live radio. So for years, I tried to get on local radio stations for a job, and it just never worked out. So after I wrote my book, I started learning about all this media stuff you can do. And I knew people had podcasts, but I wanted mine to be different. And I wanted it to be something where it could be more, not open, but people could collaborate. People could call in and people could be part of the show. And I was speaking at an event in LA, and this gal was up speaking, and she was talking about her radio show that did the exact same thing. I'm like, well, I want that. How do I get that? So I went up to her afterwards and I said, could I ask you a few questions just about your show? So sure enough, we talked and she told me about it. And she referred me to where I had my show for over 3 years. Now, I'm not a techie person. Almost like you, I almost got caught up in the, how-tos. And I thought, if I could have somebody, because I didn't know any techie people at that time, this was 3.5 years ago, that could take over the show. So I thought, well, if I could get it produced and I could have a live show where people could call in and ask questions during the show, to me, my life was complete. And when I first started the show, always when we first start something, when we end it, a lot, we're so much hopefully better than what we were. And I go back now and listen to my beginning shows, because I always listen to every show. After I produced a show, I went back and listened to it, because I was always wanting to learn from that show. Plus networking the person that was on the show. So that's how I learned to get better with the show, and also learning other tips and tricks from other podcasters and radio people of what to do. I'm still trying to get a local show, but it's not working out very well. So I thought I had one.
No, yet. It's not working out yet.
Yet. And but
I think what you're saying is really interesting, because, my first radio show for 2.5 years, I did a live radio show. Then when I moved from Dallas to Albuquerque, 2 years ago, I met these two guys that were producing a local show called Go Local Boom. And it was all about, local businesses. And they asked me if I would come on and co-host it with them, which was super fun for me. It was the first time I did in studio radio. And so learning to work with, a producer and, having to do it in between commercials and stay on topic. And we had 3 different guests on that show every single week, and, driving down to a studio and stuff. So it had a lot of things about it that I really, really loved. There were a few things about it, like that big drive downtown every single week, that I didn't love as much. And so it was really interesting. And then when I moved back to Dallas, I said, you know what, I'm just going to create my own in-home studio, because for me, I'm much more of a global business owner. And so I thought I do something here that I do locally in person, but I wanted to be able to have my radio show be, more global. And I thought to myself, oh, do I want to do it live or do I want to have a podcast? And the deciding factor for me, so I think that this is kind of the things I want to talk about. What are some questions so the audience out there can be asking themselves? For me, as a speaker and someone who travels all the time, it made more sense for me in the end to go with a podcast so I could pre-record. And this way I could pre-record, make it really easy. And so I went with that decision. I also, for myself, made the decision to not do video at the same time, because I also do video interviews and I do expert interview series, and I do Facebook Lives. So I figured I could do the video there, and I decided that in the podcast, because I do travel, I wanted to just be able to focus on audio. So that was just the decision I made for me, because it worked for me. But I think there's a lot of different ways. Like I told you earlier, yesterday when I did a LinkedIn Live, the girl that was interviewing me did a LinkedIn Live, a Facebook Live. She was recording for the podcast. We were in her Facebook group, and she was doing all of those things at the same time. And I was like totally amazed. We did have some glitchy, techie things, and we had to do a couple different stuff. But overall, I was so impressed, the balancing act of doing all of those things. So kind of that was like a long lead into a question, I think. But so what are the things for you that you found that, you tried this and yes, you love them, but what are some questions that the audience should be asking themselves? So if they're thinking about doing live radio versus a podcast versus local versus not, what are some of the questions that you think that they should ask themselves in order to come to the answer that's right for them?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to clarify too, for my live radio show, I had it right in my home office. So people would call in, but they'd call in right to the studio, but I was in my home office. So I could actually pre-record as well. So if I was traveling, because I travel as well for speaking. And, but if you're questioning, question what's going to fit your lifestyle. What's going to fit for you, for a business owner, or for that person wanting to do a podcast? Is it an in-home studio? Is it something you want to go somewhere and do it? I know people that rent spaces that they can go do a radio show from there. It's just depending on what fits your lifestyle. If you travel a lot, yeah, definitely you want to pre-record and you want to be able to line out your shows. And also, what do you know? Do you know the tech stuff? Do you know how to record a show? But also don't get caught up in the how-tos. Just decide what you want to do and then go make it happen, which I know sounds easier said than done. But for me, I didn't know how to do any of that kind of stuff, but I just jumped in and said, let's make this happen. And it was something
I think once you know what questions to ask, that kind of helps you to know what is the best answer for you. So like, I know for me, I'd been asked many, many times to be, in a production, right, where there was a producer. But one of the things, and I think this is really something I think people should really think about, is whenever I would talk to a producer and they would pitch to me why I should go with them, I always got to tell you, I don't think they did their due diligence, because, and I'm going to tell you, this is like 3 to 5 different companies. All of them made the same fatal mistake of why I didn't choose them. And the thing was, they never asked me what I wanted. What did I love about the process and what didn't I? Because every one of them said, oh, this is the one thing they said that they would do. They said, we can make it so all you have to do is show up. We'll produce it. We'll do this, and this. And all you have to do is show up. We can create this form for you. We can do this and that. And the thing that they never bothered to ask or do their work, because they should have known to ask, is that was the thing that I wanted to do all along. I hand select all my guests. I vet them myself. I ask them. There's a reason I want to have them on the show. I didn't want somebody else to do that for me. And that was the reason I said no to them, because I felt like they should have asked me that. I think it's really important to kind of think about what are the parts of the process that you want to do, and don't be afraid to negotiate that. If you're thinking that you want to have it produced, that's great. But it was totally okay to say, oh, I know you offer that. I don't want that, though. This is what I want.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Absolutely.
And make that work for you. And I think that for me, I ended up not going that way. But I did end up hiring a podcast editor to take care of the things that I didn't want to do. So I was like, here's the things I knew I did want to do. And here were the things that I didn't want to do. I didn't want to edit. Like that's not a skill set that I had, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to make sure that it was everywhere. And so I interviewed several people till I found somebody that fit my budget and somebody who would do all the things that I wanted them to do. So I think it's really clear, and you should ask yourself, what are the parts of the process that you love? And what are the parts of the process that you absolutely do not? And if you get clear on those things, then knowing which way to go, I think will help you. What do you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And again, I didn't know anything about producing or anything like that. Now, I actually thought it was so I'm a little bit opposite of you, because I thought it was interesting to have a producer. And I thought it was interesting that somebody was going to be there, because I had to do the same thing. I have to, count down the time and, find the messages but I also got to select who I was going to interview, which I really loved. I also found that some people were more particular than others, and it was okay, but I wanted to bring on the people I wanted to bring on. And I had absolutely no problem. I really did not have any issues with who I went with, but if I was to do it again, I'll probably start a podcast, just because it's easier for when I'm going out, like with you, speaking. And if I want to record on a Monday, I can record on Monday and play it on later that week. But again, I would have to go out and find a tech person to help me with that. But I tell you what, there's so many different venues now for podcasts. It's just up to you what your preference is.
And I think what their goals are and why they want to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And what kind of people do you want to interview? Is there a niche that you want to interview? Is there people that you really want to reach out to? I mean, I ended up interviewing so many awesome people, and a lot of them were referrals from other people. I had PR places contacting me all the time, and I never took one of their guests, because I was able to go out and find my own guest, and people referred other people to me. And it was so phenomenal that the networking that I got from having my own show was phenomenal. And it was and then that opened me up to like brand new things within myself. And so it's just, networking and podcasting is wonderful.
I think they go hand in hand together too, because I know that when I was thinking about it, I told myself, okay, so now that I decided this was what I was going to do, I got a pencil and paper, right? Pen and paper. And I said, okay, so who is on the list of people that you would like to interview? And my list was so long, I got to tell you, I could do 3 interviews a week for the next 5 years, and I already have a list. Like, I don't need to worry about having guests, finding guests on the show. That, for me, is the easy part. But I think it is because A, I'm in the marketing and media business, and 2, because I'm a natural networker, right? And stuff though, but I don't think that should let anybody stop them if they don't, because there's a lot of ways out there that you can find people to have on your show. So there's a lot of different things that they can do. So if that's not who you are, that's not your skill set, don't worry. There's plenty of resources and tools out there for you, which actually leads me to where I want to go now, which is we have this portion of the show that I love, and we call it OpenMic, #OpenMic, sort of my version of social karaoke. And what I would like is, this show is called the Marketing, Media, and Money Show for a reason. So could you please share with the audience, I'm going to pass the mic to you. So could you please share with everybody your best marketing, media, or money strategy, tip, tool, or resource?
Absolutely. I love that you asked that question, by the way. You know, my best marketing strategy is really helping other people and trying to promote other people. But also, I always on social media, try to be positive. I don't like to get into any political rants or anything like that. I always try to be positive. I try to bring positive affirmation when I post. When I respond to people, even though I might help them. If somebody's asking for something, that's just one way I can give back. And that for me is a good way to market myself, just because now people say all the time, gosh, you're always so positive. Well, you know what? Life is life. All of us go through stuff in life that we don't like. And we can either let it define us or propel us forward. And I let it propel me forward. I remember when my husband passed away, I thought, I just want to know that a baby was born today. I just want to know that, so I know the circle of life has continued. And when I found out that I knew somebody that had a baby, and I'm like, okay, now I feel better about myself. So I actually give that back now to other people as well. If people are going through hard times, I reach out to them and I say, no business, nothing intended. I just want to be able to help them. They in turn will remember that. They in turn will remember that, hey, Joe, is that what I'm after? No, I just want them to feel better about themselves. Or if I can lend a helping hand. So that's really my marketing tip, is really being able to give back to others and do it in a positive way so they can figure out that it can be better and life does get better no matter what.
I love that. Thank you so much, Joe. And I think that really does go towards the perseverance to productivity, right? Because that's producing positive results.
Yep.
Something that, some people have to persevere, and they, things happen in life, right? And not everything is the most positive. What is the saying, right? Really, you can't control what happens to you, but you can control your attitude about it. Mm-hmm. And so I love that. Thank you so much.
You are welcome.
How can people connect with you?
Absolutely. So they can go to my website. It's johausman.com. Now I tell everybody I'm the female Joe. So my first name is J-O. So it's johausman.com. You can email me, joe@johausman.com. Or you can also find me on all the social media outlets. I'm most in LinkedIn and Facebook.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, going in there to let us know where you hang out. I love it. Thank you so much. So everybody, if you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and review the podcast on your favorite listening platform. And remember that sharing is caring. And we'd also love to invite you to join us and the other podcast guests, our magazine subscribers, our magazine contributors in our Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups/marketing media money. We would love to have you as part of our community as well. So thank you, Joe. Thank you, everyone out there. And I look forward to seeing everyone on the next episode of the Marketing, Media, and Money podcast.
Thank you for joining us today on the Marketing, Media, and Money podcast. To shorten your learning curve even more, make sure to grab your free copy of the Marketing, Media, and Money magazine at www.marketingmediamoney.com. I promise your business will thank you.